So hello and welcome again to Injury Time, second episode of this restarted season. I'd like to welcome Prad and Orko as usual. Guys, I hope you're doing well. Prad in Goa and Orko in Imphal. Are you guys okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all good. As you said, restarting the season. We've restarted, but nothing else has started.
Let's okay. In that vein, of course, the fixtures have come out as usual. It is Calcutta versus Kerala in the first game. We will not go too much into the fixtures because what does it matter really? Let's get to the start of the season. But as far as the news segment goes, Prad, I want to ask you. Teams are now figuring out, their squads. They're trying to sign people and some foreigners here and there. How hard or easy is it to do it at this time in February, especially with foreigners because the good ones are already signed. The ones in January are either ones who didn't get the club or maybe who are injured and sort of coming out of it. So, how hard is it to put together a team, or is it better to just go with an all-Indian team?
I think from a lot of perspectives, it's probably just better to go with a all-Indian team. Season starting in Feb, you've got some of the teams haven't even started preseason, so you're talking about a 10-day, 2-week preseason, which is completely inadequate, and then you're going to play for 3 months and finish it. So I think everyone's just ticking a box in terms of trying to finish the league. So what's the point of signing foreigners? I think it's an opportunity now where you've seen some teams are looking to sign some of their youngsters, or so they're signing youngsters from other clubs, under 21 squads, and some of them are giving opportunities to their players. It might be the only chance where a centre back who plays centre back for his under 21 team can play centre back in the senior team. A striker play in his position rather than what's happened over the years. So with that, what's the point for going and signing a foreign player for 3 months? Especially, it's not as if you have certainty over what's happening next season. It's not as if like, oh, we'll sign him now. This is our opportunity to look at him and then we'll keep him for next season. That said, the clubs already have them. Fair play, keep them and honor their contracts. But where people could loan them out, we've seen Odisha loan Hugo Bumus out to a Malaysian team, and the rest have gone to the other ISL, the Indonesian Super League. So I think that makes the most sense.
Vago, what do you think, right? You've dealt with, agencies and stuff like that. How hard is it now even to pitch a player to these clubs now?
I think on the contrary, I think clubs are scrambling. At this point, it's just anything that is thrown at them. And honestly, it's a chicken head mentality when it comes to players. How a foreign player is usually pitched is that first he gets pitched to one club, then an offer is generated, then magically that offer is circulated to all clubs, and then whichever club makes the highest offer signs the player. Right? No logic of any fit. Do we want this player? Do the people making decisions understand what type of striker they want? Because everyone thinks strikers are only to score goals, sit in the box, but honestly you have like 15,000 different type of strikers, right? So are they really thinking on those lines? That's not true. And on the other hand, I think this is a moment for a lot of people, for those people to capitalize, right? I think a lot of people will take advantage as they have done for years, but in this scrambled environment, more people are just going to go for it, right? And these are the same people who got those posts written on social media and all of that. We know this for a fact, right? So I mean, all hell has broken loose. So, and I agree with Brad. What's the point of signing a foreigner for 3 months, right? Invest that money back in. You're anyway looking at a league where the ISL is asymptotically approaching an I-League's curve, right? So why sign those foreigners, right? Because you have Indians, and we've seen this before. We have Indians in the league who approach a foreigner's level if played for long enough, right? But then there is no long-term plan in place for that player, right? That player might play all the match in the ISL that year, and then nobody knows what's going to happen because the club in mind does not have a 5-year plan for the player or a 3-year plan for the player, right? So it's great to see some clubs just sneaking in under 21 signings because they're working with the right intent. I feel they understand that the ecosystem has gone apeshit, if I can use the word, and building for a more sustainable future. Honestly, you sign a foreigner now, you're paying what, 20k USD for a month. You're paying, let's say, 80 to 100k USD for the season, right? That's a CR down, right? And you don't even know. Like most foreigners who are coming now are probably injured or probably haven't played or just haven't found favor with any clubs out there. So what sort of foreigners are you signing? Because some people, they look, so recently there was a signing, right, where someone said, oh, they were in Wolves' academy team, but 22 the players nowhere. So what sort of player are we getting? It is essentially a black hole. We don't know what player you're getting.
Yeah. We'll revisit this part of signing foreigners and players, etc., in the second part of our conversation, which will be focused very much on the rinse and recycle sort of idea that has been going on in ISL for a while. We'll do a deep dive. But before that, sticking to the news part, Orko, I'll come to you for this as well. Pamela Conti, another foreign coach, has been signed for the under-17 team. This is, I don't know how to ask this question, right?
Just ask.
Why are we like what? So some Indian works hard, takes them wherever they are now, and then you superimpose a foreigner who might be good. I'm not saying she's not good. She's, resume is fine, and we expect some miracle to happen. And then sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If it does, the coach gets the credit, the AFF takes the credit. If it doesn't, fine, it is
Players
maybe
get the
not
blame.
much time. Yeah,
Players get the blame. Players
players
get
get the blame.
scapegoated.
So, what what sort of preparation is this? Like, do you think this is good? Like, first of all, do you think
No,
this is
no.
okay? Okay, but I'm not saying good preparation. I will never say good preparation. Do you think this is okay preparation?
No. So, AFF is similar to those missionaries, right, who believe Hisu exists in people, right? They think this person will come, sprinkle some holy water, and suddenly some exorcism is done, right? For AFF believes that honestly these people will work miracles, like turn water into wine overnight. It's not going to happen overnight, honestly, right? You have Amelia Valverde was what do you say, signed 50 days before the league, 50 days before the championship, right? 50 days. I mean, you can't do anything in 50 days. Similarly, Pamela Conti might get a little more, I think 4 or 5 months, right? Still, you can't undo years of damage in 5 months. And what I've learned from my time working in grassroots is that unlearning is more difficult than learning, right? Unlearning all of the wrong things that you've learned in your numerous years learning football, you can't undo that in 5 months and then learn something new. That's never going to happen, right? So yeah, I feel like AFF's just doing this because Coca-Cola's just handed them a big check. Here, go crazy, right? Maybe throw in a few Coke cans in your Instagram posts, right? Maybe get Pamela Conti to drink 3 cans of Coke. And right, I mean, honestly, I don't see the point in it. I don't see the point in it, right? Did you wake up at this moment and think that this person would be the right fit, right? If so, did you have a plan in place for this cycle? Because this cycle didn't start today. This cycle started 2 years back, right? 2 years, 4 years back. So you didn't have a plan in place. You just thought, oh, as we say in Delhi, Gora Chamra hai, le lo, right? So
Brad,
yeah,
coming
I
to
mean,
you, right? This seems to be a recurring theme, not just here. Like, no, maybe the timeline is maybe slightly longer. We had Thomas Denner be in a similar situation who was superimposed. We had Luis Martin Di Matos superimposed for the under-17 boys league. Long, under-17 World Cup.
8 months before the World
8
Cup.
months before.
8
See, the
months before the
timeline
World
is
Cup,
longer.
and 2 years after they had another foreign coach who was sacked. Literally after the AFC, after India played the AFC qualifiers, after they did a very good job, by the way, in
the
Goa
under-16
against the
AFC
likes of
also, right?
Saudi Arabia and all that. This context makes it more incredible, honestly. So yeah, but Parad.
Yeah, so this is
Yeah,
what I want to ask,
I think
Brad. Like, how does how do you see this kind of like I have, like you said, no, the unlearning. I do this. I break my knuckles a lot. And it's something that I picked up from my father, and I hate that I do this, but I keep doing it. So if you get tuck in between our recording, it's me making this. But how do you fix this?
How do you fix this? Simple. Get rid of the people who are making these hirings, because they should. I mean, but then again, why are they in that position in the first place? And what I mean by that, look, forget about the Matos, and that was a whole different saga. But with this current cycle, I mean, in the under-17s case, it wasn't a local Indian coach that got them qualified. I think they had the under-20 coach, the Swedish guy. And they just said, "Oh, hang on a second, you're free, you're getting paid, or you're getting paid by the Swedish FA most likely." So here you go, you're doing nothing, coach the under-17s, and you had to win 2 games. It's hardly a qualifier, right? You had 2-1 against Uzbekistan, and I think Turkmenistan. It was just pretty easy group. There's 3 teams, you just had to finish top and come out of it. And then I think because of the conflict between 2 teams, they had to bring in a new coach. So fair enough, you need to bring in a new coach, go ahead. But it has to be a proper process, like I was saying. Did you advertise this job and take 5 or 6 candidates and say, okay, this person might be the best one? Because irrespective of what happens on Feb 12th when the draw comes out, right? And then leading up to April 30th when the tournament's going to start. And then what happens? Is this coach just going to be jettisoned after that? Or, there's a plan for that coach? But there isn't, because I didn't see the job advertised and people applying, and we don't know who the shortlist was. It's just like what we were talking about earlier, where an agent just slips something to the decision makers at AFF, just like as happens at clubs, and says, "Hey, you should look at this CV." From knowing them, I mean, they struggle to open an email or reply to an email, some of these people. So they just probably saw the word Conte and thought, "Oh, Conte sounds good. Heard of Antonio Conte. Thought must be, Conte, Italian. Yep, let's go for it." It's that level of daftness, I'm sure, that at which they plug for it. Because I'll bet my bottom dollar that Pamela Conte has not watched or followed Indian football prior to her agent just saying, "Hey, you're unemployed. You want to have a chance of taking a team to the World Cup? It look good on your CV. It's 3 months, big deal, easy money." And then head back, because there's no way. I mean, even today's, I was just chuckling with somebody who sent me this. Today, they put a post of her saying her first day taking training with the girls. I think it was in Bangalore. It's the picture of her with some flip chart in front of her. She's probably just trying to figure out who the names of the players are. And that is the reality. And you take, there's no continuity. Who was the assistant coach that was with the under-17s then? Is that coach with them? Same staff with them? So you're just throwing some Italian coach in there who's reasonable CV, but it doesn't mean, as Orca said, she's going to be able to produce miracles with this. And the bigger issue is, what have these girls been doing since they qualified? So they qualified way back in, when was it? Yeah, October these games took place. And then have they played any competitive matches? Has there been any leagues? Nothing. So it'll be the usual, what we do with national teams. Like, let's get a coach in, let's have a long training camp, and then exposure trip. They go play some exposure trip, and then let's not embarrass ourselves by playing national teams, because it looks bad if we lose. So let's play some random club teams where no one knows the level, and then go to the tournament. And as I said, if they lose, the coach will say the players need this Indian football needs blah blah blah. They'll give you their whole remedy for it, which will never happen. And you'll not hear from these girls again until the under-20 cycle, where probably a lot of them will just be rinse and repeat. So.
Yes. Okay, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said this: Indian football loves to recycle its players, especially at the national team level, right? Not long back, SAF still conducts an under-15 championship. It's crazy, especially for the women. If I look at the data, some women get in at the under-13 level at 13 years, right? Same, move on to the under-17. Same, move on to the under-20. Now you're under pressure to justify all of these long camps and all of the scouting you've done, right? So what do? You magically push some of these through to the senior team, right? So a girl has a free pass from the age of 13 to the age of 21, whether you improve or not. And this takes into account all of the other girls who are improving. Sorry?
I'll play devil's advocate here. Huh? So
okay.
The whole idea has to be under 13, they go up and up and up. And then the bottom half, or the like the last 30% gets cut every year, right? That has to be the
Doesn't.
ideal case scenario.
Doesn't.
No, that's okay.
Doesn't.
But does India have the numbers to ensure that the bottom 30% gets cut? Brad is
Yes.
shaking his head, so I feel like I might have hit the nail on the head.
No, but that's the problem. Like, we know there isn't enough of a probably huge talent pool to pick from, but then we know that's the problem. Fix that. Don't keep doing the same thing again and again. Like, we all know that's the problem. Everyone knows that. You don't even take a genius to work that out. Even the guys who are in charge of the national team setup, or the national team director and all this, even they are daft enough to know that is the problem, right? But they won't fix it. Therein lies the problem. Like, you got, I think Orca's team is playing in this Reliance Development League, right? It's taken a private body to organize this kind of a league. And why aren't you pumping investment into those leagues and creating more of those? And especially when we try to host tournaments, and you know that every year, this is going to happen every year. There's going to be an under-17 qualifiers every single year. It'll be around that September, October time. Every year, the team will, this is an annual thing where AFCN and the qualifiers for the World Cup, which is going to be in Morocco. So why not invest in the leagues? And you're going to then obviously increase your pool. And then you bring in, let's say, Conte or whoever, whatever they want. Watch these leagues, assess it, pick the players, and then try and improve the leagues, improve the quality of the coaching in those leagues. Otherwise, you're making the same mistakes as you do with other age group teams and national teams and whatever. It's the same answer will be the same. Oh, there's not enough football. So these camps are just pointless.
So is there a social
Also,
side to this?
when
Because
they're in the camps,
because
just adding one point here. Yeah, when they're in the camps, they're not playing competitive games, but all the other girls out there are playing competitive games. They're playing senior leagues, they're playing youth leagues, they are playing. So how are you saying these guys are only improving when those guys are out there playing games, right? When they're out there playing senior leagues, when they're out there playing senior teams, right? How are you so sure that they're maintaining their progress through the 8 years, right? And they're still the top dogs. You're not. You're not. You're just pushing, you're just hoping, you're just giving all of the facilities to a bunch of 20 girls, hoping some miracle will come out and you'll produce 4-5 top players, right? You're not widening the pool. You're not, throwing your net out there to see. And honestly, what sort of, my question, simple 2-3 questions. Is there a database that exists? I think everybody knows the answer to that, right? Is there any data that exists? Everybody knows the answer to that. Who are the scouts, right? Who are the talent identification? What are the processes for somebody to recommend, right? Look at the Indian futsal team that went, right? And I swear, you watch the games, you will know that half of them are not futsal players or essentially players
to
who
Nepal,
can play the shot.
right?
Sorry?
They lost to Nepal, right? Nepal or Bhutan.
And Bhutan.
Yeah.
And Bhutan. And Bhutan. And I've never seen a futsal team where player doesn't take a 1v1 or player hesitant to take a 1v1. I've never seen a futsal team where somebody takes a repetitive long shots from their own half. I don't understand this. I don't understand this. So yeah, clearly there are some gaps in talent identification, but talent identification later. First talent development, then talent identification.
So the question I was wanting to ask is about the society, right? I read a story a few years back about women swimming and the stagnation in women swimming. And a lot of it is because of the iteration around the age of 17, 18 when they go into college. Many reasons. One is that they go into education, they get good education because national, medalists and so on. They also have this idea that women playing or swimming outside, you get tanned, and that's not a beauty culture or status that in India parents think this way. Also, they lift weights and become little strong and bulky, and they don't. That also doesn't adhere to the beauty status and symbols. Obviously, the people who swim are not the same people who play football. It's a different economic class. But is there an equivalence here as well, where most of your players come from, say, Manipur? Now, a lot of them coming from Jharkhand and underprivileged society also. So is there a social issue also that we need to tackle here, because women should be allowed to play more?
Me?
Yeah, whoever.
Yeah, go on, okay. You go on and I'll give in my...
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think there is a social issue. Yes, there is not a culture of women playing sport. Our mothers, our grandmothers didn't play. sport, right? Clear. But yes, there is an increase. The increase in privileged parents taking their kids to, right? We have the father of a girl child here. I think he takes his daughter's sports very seriously, especially given he's from a sporting background, and so do a lot of other folks, right, who grew up watching international events in the 90s and 2000s. In the marginalized class, there is a lot more emphasis because, and this is slightly a social controversial issue, there is a lot of prevalence of addiction and alcoholism in the male population in a lot of marginalized area. So the girl immediately becomes the breadwinner. She becomes the go-to person to sustain, what do you say, the family's income or livelihood. Right? There's a lot of pressure on her to go at least work somewhere, right? So sport is a great leveler. For example, my girls studying in schools which have a highest percentage of 81 will never make it to DU, which has a cutoff of 95, 96. They'll never make it. Yeah, Delhi University. But sports is the great leveler. Sport is a great level. But when it is done right, sport is the great leveler between the marginalized and the privileged. In fact, the marginalized have a better chance because they have better BMS, basic motor skill. They get in their 10,000 or 20,000 steps every day, and they have less access to distractions such as a mobile phone, a mall, a picnic on this thing. They are very focused towards whatever they do, right? If you give them the opportunity. So yes, I feel like for the marginalized class, takes sport and runs with it.
Brad?
Yeah, I think, look, even you count the girls that are playing in Manipur and other places in the Northeast. Meghalaya, I've seen Rangbijit have a pretty good grassroots program where a lot of girls are playing. You're seeing more girls playing now in Meghalaya. That'll have a Mizoram always did. You've got Odisha, you've got Jharkhand, those regions that are. So if you count that, then you take the privileged societies in your Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, soccer school setups and tier one, as well as your sort of Goa and other places in Tamil Nadu, which historically are where girls have played. There's more than enough players playing at the moment. It can increase, yes, of course it can, but it's only going to increase if there's an opportunity for them to play. So if you're going to say, all right, your kid gets into this camp and then she's off away from home for that many months, you're also going to take away a lot of the ones who value a good education and safety of their daughter, and they're not going to put them in this kind of a setup. So if you have regular leagues like RFDL or DPDL ones, which happen in cities or in small states, and the girls are playing regularly, you hopefully will get this mix where there is a sort of wealthier class, there is a mixture of girls playing together where it's, sport is that leveler, where, because it's happening in cricket, let's not forget it. This is happening across the country in cricket. More and more girls are playing cricket now. You look at the figures for Star Sports, Geo Hotstar's happy to have that on TV, and they're not even one of the people who are bidding for the ISL, because common sense, that gets TRP, that gets advertisers, that makes revenue. So women's sport is definitely growing in the country. Can they tap into it? So parents have no issue with their daughter playing cricket. If you look at the numbers that are growing at youth level and at a senior level as well. So that's a convenient excuse that, again, it's like the old excuse we used to use in football, or, physically we can't match up to the Europeans, all those kind of BS reasons, because they don't want to do the simple thing, create more opportunities for kids to play, whether it's school tournament, whether it's leagues. The schools have facilities in a lot of these places, and, you talk about, earlier touched upon about futsal. Why not? Why can't girls be playing more futsal? I mean, those girls who are playing at the moment looks like that's the first time they're playing futsal. It doesn't look like it's something that they do regularly. Just as I said, the way they're playing, that does not look like. It looks like footballers just trying to play futsal. So I think it's the most obvious thing. Just create more opportunities for girls to play, create more leagues, have them running longer time during the season. Don't have them during the exam times. If you want to encourage kids to play, right? Everyone knows this, but the second division, the IWL2, was due to start around now, which is about a month before most exams. So similarly, the under 17 girls, a lot of them should be probably having sort of serious board exams now, will probably be away on some camp. So you might be losing out on some of the top players by not structuring things properly in youth sport. And it's always been the case with youth sports in the men's, and now there's more eyeballs on the women because they're actually doing better. But the problems are exactly the same.
Yeah, so we'll end this section with a couple of pleas and stuff. One of this, it just reminded me because you said this. I recently met Deepak sir, the coach from Kerala, who was the Santosh Trophy coach and of Lakshadweep and so on. So he was telling me about a friend of mine who was picked up for the under 17 team when we were in school. Under 19. He never played anything, directly came into under 19 district. And like you said, it came across the board exam time. And he really couldn't focus, and now he's gone. So when I met him, he was saying, "You remember that boy? He was really talented boy. Whatever happened to him?" I said he's now working in IT field and he's happy. He's played some semi-pro, whatever. But we lose so many players, like you said. He's from a middle class background, so they focus a lot more on education. Fair enough. And also, I think a plea in general to the parents that let the girls play. It's good for them generally, and don't look at it from win or lose mentality. They might get good education from it. You might be able to take it to the next level. All these things are good ones that come out of it. So now let's move on to the deep dive section. So some of the things we've already mentioned so far, talking about rinse and repeat and how to scout, etc. So this is our deep dive topic. What is the propensity in the ISL to repeat coaches and players and recycle them, right? And why has that always been the case? So, Prad, I'll come to you first because you've been CEO of an ISL team. What do you look for in a coach and a player, especially foreign players? Let's focus on the foreign coaches and foreign players at the moment. How do you know what they are like? Is it an agent-led move to sign a player and a coach, or is it something that you keep a tab on, lean on your contacts across the globe, and see if you can get a player from there? How does that whole thing work? And then we can talk about the repetition part.
So I think, see, the problem with the ISL, in the past, there was this rule, obviously, about marquee. So that pretty much eliminated a lot of good up-and-coming coaches. And it meant you're always going to end up with a lot of people who, let's say, coach at the Premier League level and struggling now to find a job because maybe hadn't kept up with modern trends or just the way it is. I mean, football's a tough thing. Once you fall off the, that treadmill, and even in the Premier League, let's not forget, Premier League is also a rinse and repeat. There's a lot of the same, Nuno Espirito Santo got sacked from Tottenham, ended up at Forest as well at Forest.
Back, yeah.
Lost job there, he's at West Ham now. And, David Moyes, Man United, West Ham, back to Everton. So that happens everywhere in the world because people, there's enough books written about this, how people just have this notion of these guys have experience of coaching in this league. And I think yesterday or day before, Kunal Majgaonkar did a talk in Bangalore about what it took to when BFC was started, about creating the culture, creating that. And for people who run clubs, should probably listen to that. I think it was like a TED talk where you realize that there's so many things that are done wrong, but people will continue doing it because they're like, oh, that's how it's done. And unfortunately, that's the problem in the ISL. So when you're looking at coaches, a lot of them, I think a simple question I would ask is, do they actually want to be here for the longer term or longer run? Are they going to develop and improve the Indian players? Because if they're just going to come in and say, I need ISL ready players, I need players who've got experience of ISL. What's the difference? The player who's been playing in the ISL for the last 5 years just because his agent has managed to push him in there straight from the India under 19s to 21s to ISL team, as opposed to a player who's come up through the ranks in the I League. The difference, as we know, is very little. But there's a stupid notion that, only the players who have ISL experience can handle it in this league. And a coach who's never followed the league before coming here knows no better. So it's the easy excuse for him to say, I don't have, when you're losing, it's the great get out clause. I don't have experienced players, right? When you don't really know the difference between, Eleni Rodriguez or another midfielder that you're comparing with. The next thing is, can they actually make players better? Typically, teams with the biggest budget win. So you get top quality foreign players in the ISL, you're going to win the league. No, we've seen it with Bengaluru FC, we've seen it with Mohun Super Giants, we've seen it with Mumbai when they had the money chucked in as soon as the City deal happened, they went on to win the league. So money buys you success at this level and at any top league level. But I can count on my fingertips, and Orca, I don't know if you could, how many coaches that have come from abroad in the league over here, or the I League, even if you go back to I League days, Sunday, who improve the Indian players, because that's a sign of how good a coach they are. The rest is just managing, and you're getting, you get the top players, you're going to win, right? How many have made Indian players better? And I think I look at guys like probably Elko, from his time even at Prayag and later at Northeast United. You look at coaches like Des Buckingham. The Indian players under them significantly improved, and their teams went on to do well as well. So they not only got the results, but they actually made players better, and their teams, as a result of it, played better. The teams were better. Now, the fact that after almost 14 years of the ISL, you can count on your fingertips how many coaches have made players better. The rest of it's the same cycle of keep demanding that. Oh, when I was at FC Go, I had these players, therefore I need those players to win. Let's get them. And therefore FC Go's like, okay, I know you're going to come after these players, so I'm going to put a premium on them. And then the value of those players goes up. And you can always put the value of those players up because certain coaches will always come for their same players because they don't know any better. They're not watching Santosh Trophy, I League, second division. They're not going and watching RFPL games and spending any time. As soon as the league's finished, they're on the first business class flight out of the country, right? So they've got no interest in being here in the long run to develop players either. They want instant results because that's the nature of the business. They're not looking at, oh, I'm going to develop these players for Odisha. In 5 years' time, Odisha will have some really good players who come through. But in the short term, I'm not going to get the results. That's not going to happen. So you probably see that in the past or more in the I League because there was that financial disparity. Clubs like Air India always get some good young players from unknown players that would break in and come through. Shillong Lajong, Ranbajit, Royal Wind, or Aizawl FC for that matter. But it won't happen in the ISL because of the way clubs go about recruiting. And lastly, I think the other factor that the person who's making the decision above which is basically the owner, sometimes wants that big name and wants that sexy name, foreign coach in the Premier League or this, that, and the other. And that swings the argument because just like we're talking about with the national team coaches, I think the person who makes the decision has never watched the coach. Very rarely have they actually gone and watched them training or got feedback from players that played under them. Or do they call the CEO in Spain or England and say, what was he like to work with? Do they, do any of that you would do in a normal job where you'd get a rep? I doubt it. 99% of the time, and Orca knows this having worked in the industry, it's agent and then the yes man at the club gets that person in because they're also in cahoots with that agency. And because that coach comes in, the remaining players that come in, foreign players especially, come through that same agency. And so that everybody gets a piece of the honey. So those holding onto the honey pot get sticky fingers, and everyone who's associated with it make sure that they're looked after and kept sweet. So that's the model at the moment.
So could you
in a nutshell?
So any one of you can answer this, right? And I'm here asking the questions because the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Could you, as a coach or somebody making decisions at the club, be expected to know what is happening all around the world, right? Because the amount of people we are signing from outside, the whole world is your oyster. So we had a time when it was all African players who dominated. Up until even now in the I League, African players have very strong representation. But ISL from the beginning itself had moved very European. Then it became European but Spanish dominated. And Brazilians have always been here since, say, in the 1990s onwards. They were there. And for a brief time in the I League, there was a move for the Asian player to move towards the Central Asian or maybe slightly West Asian also here and there, but largely Central Asian. Tursunov and all those kind of guys. So these are clearly because some agent is saying, look, this player is good value for money, so on and so forth. So how does a club react? Because they can't be watching, Kazakh league, or they can't be watching the Uzbeki league, etc. So how does that work?
They can. That's the thing. The clubs who do it properly, like for example, like probably at FC Goa, they have guys, they had an analysis team, people who are following, let's say, Spanish, Segunda, Tercera, watching defenders over there and saying, okay, these guys have been doing well. This guy's probably in that older age profile where he's willing to move to India. So they've tracked him over a couple of seasons because they know they're looking for players from that region, and the style of play wise probably will suit them. That's probably one of the few clubs in India that actually tracks players over a longer period of time. And it's not just wake up in May and then the agents send you a load of emails of these players, and then you basically get your dartboard up and then you just chuck a dart and say, all right, he looks good. Or you have your preferred agent. And honestly, most of these agents, if you went to if you asked them to go to the airport and pick up the player, they wouldn't recognize the player. They've never seen them play. They've got a tie-up with another agent or agency in Spain or somewhere else, and that's how they're getting their players. And again, typically those agents saying, look, mate, I can't get you a club in Spain. I can find you a club in India. I've got this. Do you want to go and try it out? Right? So that those players are tracking these leagues. A lot of time they'll say, yes, I spoke to my friend who's playing in India. So the same thing, they got to that stage in their career, can't find a club, know that a friend's playing in India and say, hey, what's it like? Like, hey, it's great. I'm getting 3 times as much as I was in Segunda or Tercera. It's pretty easy. It's only 20 games. Pretty much play with your eyes closed, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, sure, sounds good. Let me come over, get to stay in a 5-star hotel, etc., etc. So I don't think many clubs are actually tracking and watching players over a period of time. So if they did, secondly, don't forget when a coach comes in, he won't. You look at a lot of top clubs now; they do it abroad. The club signs the players because coaches are just going to be there for 9 months. Players have to be there for the longer term, and it's an asset to the club. Here, it's not like that. So they'll bring in a coach. So if you bring in Chennai and had a coach from Eastern Europe, you're going to get an influx of players that he knows who he's worked with in the past, whether it's in Thailand or here, there, and the other, and his players. Next year, a new coach comes in. The first thing you're going to say, not my players, right? So you got an English coach who's coming after that Eastern European coach. Outgo all those players, and income players he's familiar with and works. And it's all a trust as well, because you don't want these players who are there backstabbing you. So there is no long-term strategy in terms of how players are signed or where they come from. So it's absolutely haphazard, with the exception, I should say, of 2 or 3 clubs in the league who try and do it properly.
Okay, you want to add something to this?
No, I think market familiarity is important. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Spanish market. They kind of know what they're going to get. And also, it's easier to attract players because, like Praj said, they're on 3 or 4 times the money that they were on. And obviously, people go back and chat also. People who've been here go back and influence their friends. So you can always talk to a Spanish player in the ISL and they'll tell you, this player told me this, that. Right. And that player would have played in the ISL before. Right. So
I've noticed this in the interviews and stuff. They would say, my friend played here. And so on. Even Australia is the same.
Yeah. But I mean, if you can break that market familiarity mold, if you can actually dare to do different, like for example, I'm going to go out limb and actually appreciate Kerala Blasters for getting an Adrian Luna from a market like Uruguay, not a typical market like Spain, right?
But they got a Gallego. You had quite a few from Latin America as well. Uruguay.
Yeah, you had Gallego. Today you can find players of an ISL quality anywhere. I think you can find Asian players of an ISL quality anywhere where you don't have to pay the money that you're paying to a Spanish this thing. But the thing is, with Spain, the routines are pretty much set. You'll get this, I'll get this. The people making the decisions are going to get this, right? I have to emphasize on this because everyone at the top is whoever's pumping the money doesn't care, right? For them, it's a loss-making exercise. For them, it's a CSR / loss-making. I'm anyway going to lose 40 CR this year. What's 10 lakh or 20 lakh more? But honestly, that could be the difference between finishing first and finishing 5th, right? That's the thing. So you can find quality anywhere. And I look back to the Prad's years at Pune City, right, where they actually built one of the cheapest squads ever, Ranko, and then Prad himself. They actually did a fantastic job because they finished in the playoffs spot with the much lower budget than players than clubs under them, right? So yeah, so I think it's possible, and I think we're heading again back. The ISL's propensity was to, for some reason, it had to distance itself from the I League. For some reason, it had to say, those Africans aren't worth it. Those discount Brazilians aren't worth it. We aren't like that. We are a superior product. We are better, right? They had to try and do that, right? The league imposed severe restrictions at the start, saying this player has to be this quality, this many World Cup caps, this whatever, right? Honestly, I feel like if these clubs and the organizers were run by football people, they'd see the problem in this, right? But they're not, honestly. And if you look at ISL salaries, right, you can go to, I mean, I've spoken to few agents from South America, right, as to what money they get in the Uruguayan first division and or the Venezuelan or the Ecuadorian. I can bet anything those leagues are much better, faster than the ISL, right? You not even getting close to the money that they're on here, right? And the best part is, as opposed to working in women's football, which I do, Instat, you have Opta, you have this plethora of resources at your disposal. So it's not laziness, it's something else, and it is moral bankruptcy. Let's just put it simply.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a good example, right? African Cup of Nations just finished. How many clubs would have sent any scouts representative? Because some of the smaller countries, Cape Verde, etc., you could easily find players within the budget. Yeah. Recently, an I-League team in pre-season, this is about maybe in September or earlier August, September, the club owner, the decision maker, the CEO type person, and the coach, they had a Spanish coach, went to Argentina to look for players, right, on the recommendation of an agent. Got to watch a load of matches. Right, we saw when I think Defensa and Justicia came for the Bandurka last year, they came with pretty much under 17, under 19, 20-year-old boys. All of those guys, they beat some of the teams here 6-0. Those guys were good enough to play ISL. And you could take a gamble on some of them that you might actually make some money in the future, or you could have the sell-on value. Let's not dream about selling them on to Europe or whatever, but selling them on to Asia, right? You could have done that. But this dark club, having gone to South America, Argentina, all you have to do is just literally drive across and Uruguay is right there. But instead of that, look to play. Nah, they're not good enough. The Spanish coach said they're not good enough. Come back. And guess where they signed their players from? Spain. They signed their players from Spain. Played in the Durand Cup, were an absolute disaster. And guess what's happened now? They've sacked the coach. Right? So it's these kind of stupidity that they're like, you could have got better value. You could have identified, you could have built relationships with clubs over there where they have good youth systems. But as like I said, they're getting peanuts over there compared to what they earn. Guys from the second tier in Argentina, or because their youth players play in the second tier, or Uruguay is even less, you will get them at a really, really good value. But then what would happen over here is, if a Gallego or these players, Alfaro, etc., Uruguayan players did well one season, got a load of assistance. The next season, the guy was on $3,000-4,000. The other clubs would want to poach him and pay him $30,000 to $40,000, or $20,000 a month. So you give him a 5x multiple because he has ISL experience now, and they would do that, and then that just bumps up the value in the long run. But no one will then go, well, if we found him, we can find another one, right? And no one's willing to spend even $5,000 flying the recruitment people, the head of scouting or a technical director, whoever it is, to go and spend a month, and you could watch enough players in those leagues over there and do it. But they're not willing to do it. And it's the same back in the I-League. You get, Ranti scored a load of goals. Ranti would move from a Goan club to a Bengal club, come back for more money here. But if you just spent a month in Ghana or Ivory Coast or somewhere, you could get much, much better players. Genuinely good footballers, not just someone who stands in the box and just puts it in the back of the net. Players were actually, the whole idea of getting, when the ISL started, was get players who will improve the Indian players, and not just the sort of old I-League level of foreigners. And we've had a few. There's been some really good foreigners who come into the league and actually help. You look at guys like Bao Peche, you look at how you speak to the Indian players who played alongside them and others over the years. There have been some really good ones, but sadly few and far between.
Yeah, so this is interesting,
Just
right?
add something, right? Yeah. So you have today your Premier League clubs who have tie-ups with a Right to Dream, with a Asante, with all of these clubs in Africa, right? They have a pathway. First, they put them in a Belgium or a Norgerland, and then they route them through that, right? So they see value in those markets, right? They see value. They track these players for 2-3 years, and it comes out to be considerably cheaper for them than signing a native European, right, or a native South American, right? They see value in that, and those cultures produce great players, right? Like Pratt said, right? And another example, Mendoza, right? Mendoza came here, he wasn't that great world, but he went on to a great career. Somebody, a foreigner in ISL would just dream about, right? Went on to play for his national team. So there is value if you look for it.
Yeah. I mean, I was just remembering some story because you said, scouts traveling. Bello Rasak, who played for Mohan Bagan, he came through the 7th system in Kerala. That's his entry point. So even in India, you can just have a look and maybe you can find something. I'm sure now the levels are very different, so it's probably not going to be the case. But some numbers here, since Prad mentioned, Javi Hernandez, Marcelino, Tiri, Bumu, Roy Krishna, Ogbeche, all played for more than 4 clubs. Jahu, Fall, Carl McHugh, Naguera, Chima Chuku, Severio, Murray, Pereira Diaz all played for more than 3 clubs, and yet 2 clubs I'm not even going to go, right? A lot of them played for 2 clubs. So these guys have continued, and there is some players who are worth it, right? Krishna and Ogbeche clearly stand out, who should be playing. Everybody wanted them. But there are other players here who I thought maybe after one or maybe after the second one, you were thinking, okay, he's fine, but maybe we don't need to keep going down to that well again. But then again, the coaches are Lovera, who coached 3 clubs, Antonio Abbas coached 3 and then went to the I League, Manolo 2, Owen Coyle, Juan Fernando coached 2, Carlos Cuadret coached 2, Roca was hired by 2, Aiden coach. Molina was there, Coppel did 3, Alco Shatori did 2. So we have this same, I don't know, let's say cabal of coaches and players is sort of swirling in the ether. And it seems to me at least, like it's quite easy to look into a different market, but it's just our sort of lack of imagination in some sense. Because you see the foreign coaches who have come, right? Around 2012, they started to be extremely Spanish ridden. And that's the time when Spain was dominant, 2 Euros and 1 World Cup. So we were like, oh, that's the great thing. Oscar Bruzon was here, Roca did a good job. Then suddenly everybody wanted a Spanish coach, and then Spanish players, all of them came. Can we now get out of this thing? Because Spain is no longer Spain is again becoming what it was. Can we now get out of this circle?
Yeah, so you can't, because you hit the nail on the head with that term cabal. There is a cabal, and it's not just a notional. It actually is a cabal, and at the heart of that cabal are agents, right? They need to keep this recycle model so that if player goes from here, because it's like the estate agent who takes money from both sides, right? He takes it from the person who's renting the house, the lessor and the lessee. He takes it from both sides, and that's the game they're in. So bringing in fresh talent that's far cheaper doesn't work for them. So they need to undermine that, saying, no, it won't work. He hasn't got experience. And the coaches also buy into this, because if you keep the agent happy, the next time when jobs are up for available, no, we'll get a coach with ISL experience. You don't want to get somebody fresh from outside. So, the hands keep feeding one another. So it works perfectly for all those involved. I mean, all those people you mentioned in that circle, in that cabal, have all done very well out of this model over the last few years. The ones that have suffered are the clubs, which is why they're in the state they're in at the moment. And it's not just foreign players; it's also Indian players that are part of this. Some of them have even ventured into owning their own agencies, because they thought, hang on, why not just have a bigger share of the pie? Why should I? And their players move as they move to certain clubs, and the same players move around with the same CEOs or CTOs or whatever you want to call them. It's a massive thing that needs to be addressed.
So Arko, Indian players, right? Like I was just getting to this. I was finishing up with the foreigners and coming to the Indian players. you have some players who played for 5 or 6 teams with good money, maybe not great money, but good money. And I keep wondering, why not get someone new? And it doesn't happen. So what is this? Is it similar because you do the women's football as well? You said they keep, churning around and around. It's the same thing in the men's game also.
Well, I think most people in the market don't understand football. Let me put it simply, right? When Brad and I speak, obviously it's a different conversation. When we speak about players, right, we go into some incredible depth, right? Especially when I speak to Brad, I feel like I'm always enhancing my knowledge base by 10-20%, right? Because he's always seeing things that I'm not, right? But are people, so when at the basis level, when a conversation happens, somebody will be like, isko dekh le, iska bahut speed hai. That's the level of the conversation, right? There is no how are his touches, right? How are his reactions? What is his anticipation? How is he at playing through balls? Just an example, right? We're not going into the depths of what that position demands and what the team demands, more importantly, and what the coach demands, right? So we are not looking at a four-corner model of assessing a player. We are not looking at the technical, tactical, psychological, social. And I think, like I said, I mean, what I've learned from folks like Prad, right, is that they go into incredible amount of background research, right? They speak to 5 people, find out how the person is off the field also, on the field also. There are 500 things. This is hard work. This is hard work. I mean, let me put it that way. This is hard work. People don't want to put the hard work, right? And also there is a sense of FOMO also, right? Today getting PR articles written about very easy, right? 2 players that I can speak about that I'm shocked are still in the league. One is a striker who scored 4 goals some 5 seasons ago, and he's been literally been peddled from club to club to club to club, and he's back to his original club. The other is a captain of a former youth national team who's literally played for all the clubs I can imagine in the ISL, right? So I'm just wondering where this circus stops, because it is a traveling circus, right? And the people at the top, they really don't care, right? If they want a big name, right? They want the local papers to write about, oh, this player from that place came here, played here. They'll show it to their owners. See, this is a big scalp for us, right? This is a big name that we've got, right? Are you happy now, right? The fans, super delusional. They're also like, oh, wow, what a player we've got, huh? He scored 4 goals in ISL 2019. Must be a very good player. There you go. The circle of delusion is complete. That is the word, circle of delusion.
So, Brad, here is an interesting thing I've noticed, and we've had the small chats about this here and there. You look at I League, you had Vidyasagar, who was a player of the year, came up to the ISL, never really played much. You had Chosai Raj, who was tearing things apart in I League, came back, became a wing back in ISL, played okay, but never really hit the heights we expected him to. Falguni Singh, another player for Trau, who had a great season and then moved to, I think, Mohan Bagan, ATK Mohan Bagan, I think, at the time, and never really took off. You had Roger Zella, so many players. Yes, you had some, like, maybe Jitin MS and Danish Farooq and few of them who have done well. But why is it so difficult for these I League players to come up and do this? Is that, and I've heard someone say this, that might as well get an ISL player because he knows the league and he's at this level. An I League player, it's tough to bridge the gap. I don't think there is such a significant gap. But I might be
Nah,
wrong, so I'm asking you.
Well, again, it comes back to the same thing. Are they getting coached or just managed when they come into the ISL, right? So that's a big difference. Now you get Vidyasagar. Vidyasagar was around in, like, I remember the first time I saw him was 2016 or 17. He was playing for East Bengal's under 18 team. Probably was 25 already at that time, or 22. But that was a strong East Bengal under 18 team with a lot of 20-plus-year-olds. They had a Mizo striker. They had him. Deepak Turkey, Sangri, sorry, was playing for Mohan Bagan under 18 team. So those under 18 teams were pretty strong. So these kids have been around for a while, been in Floyd's national team setup, and they didn't get picked up directly for ISL team because they're playing in positions where a lot of foreigners were playing. That's when more foreigners could play in the ISL. So then they went to the I League. Quality of the I League had dropped significantly then, and Vidyasagar had a good season. If you're a young, talented attacking player, the one club you should not go to And there's a lot of clubs you shouldn't go to, but there's one, and that's Bengaluru FC, right? Saying the next Bengaluru, because you are not going to play in that position. There's a certain player who's playing on the left side. They'll obviously have a marquee striker up front, and then there's somebody in a 10 and somebody, and I think Udanta was there at the time. You're not going to get time. You're not going to get meaningful time. Your job literally on the field is going to be, hey, it doesn't matter if you're I-League top scorer. This is ISL. So we're going to tell you, don't shoot, pass to X, Y, or Z, right? That's your job. So you're completely reconditioning a player and then saying, he's a failure. And that could be applied to loads of others. Like Chungnonga was somebody that I saw in the I-League doing really well. I remember speaking to Ego's team match and saying, we're talking about not enough Indian centre backs. I said, there's this young kid who's at an I-League team. He'll be probably joining East Bengal. I think he had a season with Srinidhi in between. So keep an eye on this kid, somebody you can bring into your national team camps and have a look at him over the years. Srimas actually brought him into one of his camps, I think, and said, I liked him, good size, something that, but he needed more games. But where does he get games? He gets games at left back. And now he's just developed a reputation for someone who gets yellow cards and red cards. But the centre back who used to take set pieces as well. So he was quite a handy footballer. But just stuck him out on the left. Just like how Ashik was made into a left back. You then can't say, they don't make it at this level. It's fine. Look, every coach sees a player differently. Somebody might say Ashik is potentially a good left back. Coach him how to play that position then. Teach him what his body shape should be when a cross is coming in from that side. Teach him how, where he needs to be relative to his centre back, because he's not grown up doing that. Right? He's grown up being an attacking player, taking players on. So you plug a player in the wrong position or in a new position and don't coach him. And then you say the player didn't make it. And then the easy excuse is, he's an I-League player. It's not like if you put Vidyathagar back in the I-League, now he's going to be top scorer, right? You probably have to uncoach all the things that he was coached when he went to, I think it was BSC. And because there he had to unlearn a lot of whatever he was doing that was making him successful. So that's one of the biggest problems I find when these players go out there. They're not coached enough. They're not given enough time.
Is there coaching in the I-League? Is that what you're saying? And why is it different? Because you're playing I would argue that I-League travel is much more complicated and difficult. So
I don't think it's a travelers. I think you get more time with your players. So if you look at a lot of the Mizo boys who've done well at Nigel FC, they've played together with that same group of boys in the Mizo Premier League up until December, and the next year again, and then come into the I-League and play for Nigel FC under whoever the coach is. But they've got time playing regularly in that position. Whereas in the ISL, if you sign a new player, very rarely, once the season starts, if you're not part of the travel squad, you're probably not even training as much as the others. You're not training together. You're not necessarily getting. It's not as if this game, let's say Sunil's playing, Udanta's playing, Miku's playing. What happens with the reserves? Have they got a game on the Sunday after the Saturday game? No, they don't. So it's not like you're not developing young players. You're just signing them and holding them so somebody else doesn't have them. So that's why kids have to choose the right club. Go to a club where you're going to get minutes in that position you play, not just chase the paycheck. So that's where I think the coaching comes into it. And you look at it over the years as well. Look at the I-League players that have come through and done well, whether it's the Goan clubs. Those guys were there at those clubs for 5, 10 years. Some of them 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Guys have been at the Shillong Lajong for many years, like a Neem Lodji or a Bipin. And that's how they develop their game. It's not overnight that. So in the ISL, you don't get time. You have a game, especially COVID years where the games are every 3, 4, 5 days. And then even afterwards, the seasons were condensed. You pretty much day after the game, recovery session, then rest, then travel probably, pre-match, match day -2 session, maybe, or match day -1, and then game, and that cycle. So these are players who need training, and you just don't get enough of it and I don't think a lot of the coaches necessarily have the patience to do that. It's not like these kids are not coming in the afternoon for a second session. They're not getting individual training. How many clubs have individual coaches, position specific? So the players will never develop. Unless it's lucky if one of them, somebody gets injured in that position, therefore they get a chance and they get a run of games. That's normally what happens. Or the club doesn't have a budget and therefore these kids get a run of games like Northeast United in the past.
So we are running out of time. So I'll end with this, and I'm trying to bring it to the full circle where we started with the Indian coach. How important is an Indian coach's role here? And I say this because you can go and read the book Out of the Blue for more context. But Prad, you and Ashley, when you first started BFC, Ashley came in with his players. He had, the John Johnson, Curtis Osano, and Sean Rooney. You had already gotten the Johnny Manyonga. And then you were the main reason, along with Mandar, of signing Indian players, right? So you had an Indian coach or a coach who knew Indian market, who could get the right players. And Ashley repeatedly told me that they were always looking for attributes, pace, power, intelligence, whatever it is. And you could coach them. And that is a most recent example of a club who has had such a strong impact on coaching and, raising the level of the players. A lot of them might not be the national team. So how important is it to have an Indian coach who can first of all know the local league and then help develop? And I know that you took a lot of coaching sessions
Yeah. Well,
when Ashley was
so
not here and so on.
it's not just the coaching. I don't want to devalue it. It's the whole mindset of the club has to be like BFC had that mindset. And I think, look, that changed the way some people looked at football in India. They thought you don't have to do what the Goan clubs and the Bengal clubs are doing, just overpaying. And again, they used to just rinse and repeat the same stuff, right? And because immediately after the BFC thing, you had Chennai City FC. They're like, hang on, there are players in Tamil Nadu. Before that, people don't have, there's no players in Tamil Nadu. They won the league with a good core of players like Susai Raj and others, and Edwin Bansal and others who came through. Then Minerva did it with a lot of youngsters. When they first came through and broke through, credit to them, they did give a lot of young players an opportunity, and obviously the most famous one being Aizawl FC. So I-League clubs then proved that with the right scouting and right coaching, you can find players that everybody else was ignoring. I mean, BFC was probably the first one to do it, and then that cycle was repeated many times by those other teams that did it, even to an extent Gokulam as well, right? Where they unearthed players that previously hadn't been at any of the other clubs. So I think it's crucial you have that mindset where you just, whether it's with the foreign players, you think if we look outside, scratch the surface, find there are more players out there rather than the ones the agents are giving us on an Excel sheet, right? And then once you get them, you have to know the attributes of this kid. Yeah, he's not a 10 out of 10 yet, he's a 6, but I'm going to try and make him into an 8, right? And I can make him into an 8 by if I do X, Y, and Z with him, work on. He's not great in the air. Okay, let's work on his heading. If I'm going to sign a Udanta who's a number 9 at TFA and play him out wide as a winger, got to teach him how to cross the ball. Because he's been used to getting on the ends of crosses, not the actual one delivering the crosses. So you've got to know what tools you have and what you want to get out of it. And then complementing them with the other players that you have. I think that's something which, again, it goes back to what I was saying, there is no long-term thinking with a lot of these clubs. It's all just like, even now with a lot of the Indian coaches, they're going to come in. You're going to get, I was watching a BFC just before we got on this under-21 league game, 13 players from Manipur in the squad signed. Why? Obvious reasons, right? Mm-hmm. And, and that will change if the coach is no longer there, that'll change next year. It'll be, so that's always been a problem in Indian football. Whether it's Suki was in charge of the national team, there'd be significantly more number of players from Punjab. You get a coach from West Bengal with the India under-19 team, all of a sudden there'll be a huge shift of more players from there, percentage-wise. And with certain coaches now, there's always going to be a high proportion of Manipuri players who are overage, because certain coaches prefer that with the under-17 level. So that's something that is going to take a few generations to change, probably.
Orko, as we wind down, we have a couple of minutes. Anything to add?
No, I think the best Indian coaches, and from my observations of the last few days, are the ones working on the grassroots for 0 rupees. I'm not even kidding. They're working free of charge. There's a guy here. I go to his training every day because I love his passion. He's produced 6 internationals this year.
This is Imphal.
4 for the under 17.
Of course, in Imphal, just to give a reference.
Yeah, 4 for the under 17, 2 for the under 20. You might remember his name. His name is Tomba Singh. He used to work for Mohan Bagan. Used to call Golden Tomba. So I asked Tomba how much he makes. He says it makes 0 rupees every month. Right. So these are the only people who look at the long-term thinking. These are the only people who are looking at where is the player going to be in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. These are the only people looking at it. So yeah, Indian coaches Indian coaching, Indian players. We spoke a lot about it, but like I said, all has to come together. All has to. Right now, everything is in silos, right? And I genuinely don't think, like, I mean, we've discussed this. Every Indian player is 19, 20. There is not a lot of difference right now, barring maybe a 3-4 players, right? So they should be coached. They should not be managed, right? Your job is not. Most coaches think their job is to recruit and that's it, right? We build a good squad. Most coaches today in Indian grassroots and state league and everybody is a recruiter, not a coach. So that mentality has to change. Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone for the time. Please listen to Injury Time for more such details and stuff. Follow and subscribe to our channel, and we'll come back with more such discussions in the future as well. Thanks, Brad, and thanks, Orko.
Thanks.